dot point S14, and for this one we're looking at identifying the tensions between sustainability and short-term profitability in farming systems. So obviously sustainability is like long-term use of an area of land and being able to use it repetitively for a long period of time, and short-term profit is trying to make quick money to be able to sustain a business. So let's have a look at some of the strategies here. So first of all, we're going to name the strategies, and then we're going to give some advantages and disadvantages and identify why there's actually a tension between these two things. So first of all, in terms of short-term profit, here's some of the things we can do to make a quick profit. We can have cash crops, such as growing anything really for a quick yield. You could be wheat or barley or canola or anything else, but it's going to give you a quick, higher yielding crop, and you can sell it obviously to make money. Using artificial fertilizers such as superphosphate is an example of something that's going to increase short-term profit. You're going to get a high amount of nutrients onto a field quickly, and that's going to help you get a good yield and sell that yield and make cash quickly. Regular plowing, so kind of plowing the soil up regularly is going to cause the soil to be ready to plant seeds quite quickly, and you can plant regularly. As we know, it's not really sustainable long term. Having continuous cropping and just planting crop after crop after crop is also something you'd do if you just wanted to make short-term profit. And then lastly here, agistment. So you could hire the land out to someone. They could put their animals on that piece of land, and you could make quick money out of it. But on the other hand, they don't really care about the long-term profit. They just want to make money out of it quickly, and you do too. In terms of some advantage of this, obviously it's quick income and you get an increased cash flow in the immediate term, and sometimes farms need that. You have years when you aren't able to produce much. You might be in drought or something like that, and you just don't have money. You make a loss that year, and so doing something that's going to increase the cash flow might be something that a farmer has to do. Next, it's going to give you quick improvement in soil fertility. So putting on things like superphosphate, artificial fertilizers, is going to quickly improve the amount of the fertility of your soil, the ability of your soil to grow crops. On the other hand, we know that disadvantages of this is you're going to increase soil erosion and degradation and salinity and those kinds of things. You're going to end up decreasing soil fertility over the medium and longer term as you get some of these issues occurring. And then also poor management can affect nearby farms. So you can get erosion and poor water quality occurring and obviously affecting other farms. And eventually it's likely that you'll decrease yields. On the other hand, what are some things that a farmer can do that are long-term sustainable? You know about most of these things, but crop rotation is one. So including legumes, fallow, green manuring, also minimal or zero tillage, which you know about, using direct drill and various techniques like that. Planting trees along a creek line is also something a farmer can do to help improve sustainability. It's going to decrease erosion, etc. Deep-rooted perennials, again, is also going to help improve ground cover, hold the structure of the soil together and stop erosion. And then lastly, fencing off paddock areas near the creek will help decrease erosion, as you don't have stock walking down there and leading to the erosion occurring there. So advantages of doing these things, obviously it provides longer term reliability of production. So if your farm, if the soil and on your farm is going to be more productive for a longer period of time, that's good. And then you'll be able to kind of rely, even though your yields might initially be lower, you'll be able to rely on that. And so that becomes a more reliable cash flow in the long term. And on the medium to longer term, it's likely that you'll have increased yields. So for example, Ross Thompson's farm, which we've been to, he's had increased yields on the paddocks that he's done this kind of thing to. In the long term, he's having after a number of years, he's having higher yields than what he would have had normally with the short-term profit strategy. On the other hand, the disadvantages of doing this is that there's a high initial cost because you have to reduce paddock usage. You're not planting as many crops, etc. And this might decrease the cash flow in the short term. It also might decrease yields in the short term. So you might initially not get as much return in both yield and therefore money. You need to have good knowledge and help required. It might require you getting advice off the local catchment management authority, which is now Local Land Services, or hiring someone in, an agronomist or someone like that, to help give you advice on what to do in this situation. And then you need to also persevere to continue with the strategy. So when drought comes along, or hard financial times for whatever reason, you can't kind of back out of this strategy. For it to be long-term sustainable, you really need to carry it on and keep doing it. So the question, really, the dot point here is about what are the tensions between doing these two things. Now, it's not saying that you need to do this one or you need to do this one. The reality is that sometimes farmers do this and sometimes they do this. Now, most of the time they might be trying to do this and be sustainable in the long term, but the reality is that sometimes they're just going to have to do things that are like this in this box here for short-term profit, because they have to make their business money. They have to make money, and if they're not making money, then they will go out of business. And so the reality is that farmers do both of these things at times. Obviously more of this, hopefully less of this, but they have to do both. So what we need to talk about here is the tension between the two. And so a lot of these, in a lot of ways, these are old versus new methods. So a lot of in the past, farmers did much more of this, and now these days there's much more of this. There's still bits of both, but that's a general way of seeing it here. And so it tends to be that older farmers are less likely to take on highly sustainable methods, which we see over this side. The financial and climatic stress that occurs also determines which one you're going to choose. So if, for example, if there's a period of drought, then farmers are going to move towards this. So the financial pressures and climatic stress pressures farmers to make choices between these two things, and determines whether they want to make a short-term profit or whether they want to prioritize long-term sustainability. And another example here is if a mining company came along and offered lots of money to buy a farm to mine it, what would a farmer do in that case? So there is a tension here in thinking about short-term profit versus long-term sustainability. Now, I've put together this past question because there isn't any past HC questions for this dot point, but this is an example of a response. So a 6-mark question: discuss tensions a farmer may face choosing between long-term and short-term. And I've written this. Farmers at times face a tough choice in deciding between strategies that will lead to long-term sustainability and those that will make a short-term profit. Farmers generally wish to be long-term sustainable to ensure that their business survives long into the future and can be passed on to future owners in good condition. This would involve strategies such as crop rotations and inclusion of legumes to increase nitrogen levels in soil, minimum or zero tillage to reduce soil disruption and compaction and erosion, and fencing of creek areas to remove stock access and hence erosion. Short-term strategies for quick profit might include things such as planting an annual crop for quick high yields such as wheat, and using high levels of artificial fertilizers such as superphosphate. This will yield quick returns, but will take away from the long-term sustainability. Farmers may face this tension as they may be in conditions such as drought, increasing interest rates, or low market prices, which may force them to make a quick profit to ensure a positive cash flow for their business to ensure it survives despite the negative effect this will have on sustainability.